My name is Eric. I'm a 36-year-old office worker, and my wife Remy is 30 years old. We have no children. We've been married for 7 years. I got a transfer order and asked Remy to come with me. Remy also has a job, and as expected, she couldn't do it, so I had to go to the new job by myself. I thought, well, I can come back in a year or two, and it's only a 5-hour drive away. In fact, I went back every consecutive weekend. At the end of last year, my coworkers asked me to trade days off with them, so I went home without prior notice. I arrived at around 2 p.m., and as soon as I entered the house, I noticed something strange. I can't explain it well, but something didn't feel right. With a bad feeling, I went to the bathroom and found a razor. It wasn't mine. I looked in the washer and I found a man's underwear, which confirmed the affair in my mind. I had no idea that another man was living in my house while I was gone. Maybe this is what hell is like. I invited my parents and in-laws to have dinner with me since I was back from my new job. My parents and mother-in-law came over, and my father-in-law was at work, so he agreed to come over later. I told them that Remy was living with another guy. My mother-in-law was especially surprised, but when she saw what was in the washing machine, she agreed. They then called my father-in-law, who rushed over as well. It was after 6 p.m. when Remy arrived. She was astonished to find everyone there, including me, and after that I started to get quite impatient. I took Remy's phone and read her WhatsApp messages. The content was quite direct, and it was clear that they were living together and having a physical relationship. Remy was already crying and couldn't talk about the situation, but after 7 p.m., Jean, the affair partner, came home. Jean opened the door carelessly, and then Remy shouted, "Go home!" But before he could understand what was going on, I told him I needed to talk to him and asked him to sit with me. Jean seemed to grasp the situation after a while. He immediately told me about his relationship with Remy. Then he said, "I have a girlfriend that I'm going to marry, so Remy and I both know that our relationship isn't something I want to go too deep into, so please don't make a big deal out of it." My father-in-law was furious, and Remy thought she was the only one for him, so she cursed Jean in a language that was not English. My wife and I didn't even have a child between us, so we decided to quickly discuss divorce. I made Jean reveal his identity and his parents come to pick him up. Remy was also brought home by my in-laws, and we agreed to discuss things again at a later date. When I told Jean and his parents that I would contact Jean's company, "Please pretend this never happened at all," they gave me $30,000. He's a government employee, so please don't contact his employer, and knelt down. I decided not to do that and took the $30,000, but I think I was too kind. On the other hand, my in-laws contacted me every day. "She's lonely and a bad man cheated on her, so I hope you can forgive Remy." Or, "My daughter has stopped eating because of the shock. If you don't forgive her, she will lose weight and die," or something like that. In fact, Remy was hospitalized due to malnutrition, and my mother-in-law blamed me a lot. I thought divorce was the only way out, but Remy didn't want a divorce. And my in-laws want me to forgive her because they will monitor the situation. My mother-in-law, who was convinced that her father would die if I didn't do something about it, kept coming to my new place of work for days, crying and apologizing to me, asking me to forgive Remy. I don't want to start over with Remy, but I also don't want to see my mother-in-law like that. I mean, I wonder why my wife is so depressed. Is it that hard for her that Jean left her? I'm the one who wants to cry. My mother-in-law comes to me many times and said, "Every time she looks at me, I remember how Remy and I used to go out to dinner together. It's hard for me to be honest." She cried and said, "I'm sorry for having such a daughter. It's the least I can do. I know she's being stupid, but it hurts me to see her dying right now. I don't expect you to forgive her by apologizing, but I can't stay home and live in silence." She desperately pleaded. I felt bad for refusing to accept the home-cooked food she brings me every time, but I can't accept it, and it makes me feel very depressed. According to my mother-in-law, if Remy's weight continues to drop like this, she will be seriously hospitalized. I feel like Remy is the perpetrator and I should be the victim, but I feel bad about it. I asked her to go home, promising to stay by Remy's side from tomorrow. I was having a hard time too, and I can't eat much or even sleep. I don't believe that the situation would be resolved so easily, so I decided to hire a lawyer. I decided to return the $30,000 I received from Jean once and for all, start over, and to take revenge properly. Since I had not deleted their contact information, I called Jean's parents and said, "I still can't accept the $30,000, so I'm returning it." But Jean's father didn't even hold the phone down and started talking to Jean's mother. "That guy, the husband, just said he's going to give back the $30,000. And then another voice said, "I can manage to give up $20,000 more." It was Jean's mother's voice. I was aware that the $30,000 was not Jean's money, and since he had his parents to take care of it, it didn't hurt him at all. Knowing that, I realized that it wasn't about the money. I was going to take it to court and do whatever I could to get him punished. I decided to do so I sought out a lawyer and consulted with him. The lawyer's opinion was that even if I sued the other party, I would not be able to recover the $30,000 I had initially received. In fact, it is more likely to be halved to $15,000. And then there were the legal fees. Going to court would require me to take time off work, so it would be mentally and physically painful. So how about the $30,000? I don't want the money, but I wanted Jean to get punished and suffer. This idea too seemed very dangerous to the lawyer. "When you trample on people's lives, you put yourself in danger. There's nothing scarier than a person who has lost everything," he said. The one whose life has already been trampled on was me, so I told him that I was the one who had already lost everything. He nodded his head and said, "That's true. Let's be gentle and not push them over the edge. I signed the contract with the lawyer, and I asked him to sit in on the meeting with Jean's parents. On the day of the meeting, Sunday, Jean's parents were the only ones who showed up. When I asked what happened to Jean, they told me that he couldn't come because of work. Is it really that hard to be a government employee? I was curious. I introduced the lawyer to Jean's parents. Jean's parents were so flippant, I ignored it. I can't take the money you gave me last time. I returned the envelope. Jean's father, once he received the envelope, said, "Please forgive him. This will somehow make things more amicable." And just as I thought, he gave an additional $20,000, making it $50,000 in total. The lawyer said, "We're not thinking of suing your son in court right now, but it looks like your son is not going to be here today, so please take the money home with you." Jean's parents immediately took their money at the lawyer's casual remark. I then told Jean's parents that I was going to discuss divorce with Remy. Jean's parents got down on their knees and said, "We're sorry, please don't even think of divorcing her because of our stupid son," he kept repeating. I told him to raise his head, but he just kept apologizing. My lawyer managed to persuade him to leave with the $30,000. I asked, "Is Jean engaged?" But they were so distraught. After Jean's parents left, my lawyer said, "You know those parents seem most reluctant to have any kind of rift with Jean's fiancé." Then, prefacing his remarks with, "As a lawyer, I can't say anything about that, but if it were me, I'd try to track down the fiancé, even if it means using a detective. I know where Jean works and where his parents live, so it should be easy to find out." He even introduced me to a detective. He had told me not to push too hard, but this lawyer seemed quite motivated. I immediately went to consult with a detective who was introduced to me, and asked him to investigate Jean's fiancé. I called my in-laws and told them that I had hired a lawyer. I also told them to contact me through my attorney, and that I was thinking of divorcing Remy, but with her condition and all, I wasn't going to make a move right away. I asked them to let Remy know when she's in the right condition. My mother-in-law said, "How can I tell that girl now? What if she dies?" She accused me. I understand that. As her parent, her daughter is important to her, but I can't stand it when she treats me like I'm the perpetrator. I hung up the phone, thinking that she had it coming. Remy seemed to have completely lost her mind, and when I read the letter she had just sent me, it said, "Please forgive me, I love you. Please forgive me, I love you. Please forgive me, I love you. Please forgive me, I love you." I received 10 pieces of paper filled with those words. On the 11th piece she wrote, "I did something stupid because I was lonely." It seemed like an excuse, but it was written over and over again. I skimmed through it lightly and threw it in the trash. A few days later, my mother-in-law came to my house. I was determined not to let her in the house again, so I said to her, "Please go through my lawyer. I will not talk to you directly." My mother-in-law was very angry that I had hired a lawyer. "Why do you need a lawyer for a family matter? If you divorce her, she will die. Do you want to become a murderer? You should come home with me today and see for yourself. If you can say the same thing to her, then say it." It was a big fuss and a lot of trouble. I tried to contact my lawyer, but he couldn't come because he wasn't available. Eventually, a neighbor called the police, and 2 policemen came. The 4 of us talked at the door. The officers told me not to make a fuss because it would make the neighbors uneasy, and to keep things quiet because it was a domestic matter. I told them I was in the process of discussing a divorce. But my mother-in-law said, "No, you're not. I won't let you get a divorce." The policemen seemed to be appalled. Eventually, I called a friend of mine. She took my mother-in-law to the station and watched her until she got on the train. I guess my mother-in-law couldn't accept what her daughter did. But that doesn't matter. I, the victim, have to accept it all. Forgive her, love Remy again, and go back to my normal life. It was Remy and Jean who ruined my life. I will make sure they take responsibility. Finally, the detective contacted me. They found out the information about Jean's fiancé, which I had requested. Jean's fiancé seems to be the daughter of Jean's boss. As I had guessed, she had a high position in the public organization where Jean worked. I sent a letter to Jean's fiancé's house. I was worried that it would be treated as a prank, but surprisingly, his fiancé contacted me right away and agreed to meet and talk. Jean's fiancé's father apologized to me as soon as we met. I panicked and told him that I was the victim too, and he stopped apologizing. There was a family party at Jean's work, and the daughter liked Jean and started dating him, and they got engaged. But the fiancé's dad decided that he's not going to let his daughter marry a man who had broken up a family, so she said he's going to break off the engagement. He also said that Jean would not be fired from his job, but he would not be able to move up in the company. Then, a few days later, Jean's parents called me with resentment. If his fiancé was deeply in love with Jean, I thought it would be hard for them to break up. But apparently the breakup really happened. I consulted with my lawyer, and to ensure my safety, I moved temporarily to a monthly apartment and bought a new phone. I'm also looking for a new place to live, because I found out I was being harassed by people putting sand in my mailbox. I was right to evacuate early. I also heard that my lawyer got a mysterious call from someone saying they were going to sue me. But then he said, "Go ahead." He simply hung up. After that, Jean's side offered to pay me $300,000 and said, "Please don't take me to court." After consulting with my lawyer, we decided to end this, and left a written agreement that we would have nothing to do with each other in the future. We received the $300,000. Well, of course, we knew that the money came from Jean's parents, but I felt much better because Jean himself got punished. On the other hand, discussions with Remy are progressing out gradually. Instead of a divorce by mutual consent, it may end up in court. Remy has not been readmitted to the hospital since she was discharged, and her condition seems to be stable. I myself was not present at the meeting, but I was told by the lawyer that she had become like an old woman with gray hair and wrinkles due to lack of nutrition. I think my in-laws had been telling Remy that I was never there for her in the first place. I wouldn't go as far to say they're on my side, but it helps that they're placating her. The move has made it impossible for my mother-in-law to assault me, so I'm pretty stable. A few months later, my divorce from Remy was successfully finalized. It was a long process, but thanks to my lawyer's help, we were able to proceed with the divorce in a very peaceful manner. Now I'm finally getting used to living in a new house, and I can enjoy my life again little by little. I can't really think about it right now, but if I ever get married again in the future, I will try to avoid getting transferred due to my job.